She kneels by the headstone. The knocking sounds are coming from inside Josh's grave. They are so loud now that the loose earth across the surface of his grave trembles and skitters across the mound in tiny avalanches. Lily's terror mutates. She touches the shivering mound of earth. Her heart goes cold. Josh is down there, knocking on the inside of his coffin. A horrible entreaty to be freed from death, to be loosened from this prison. The walkers are coming for Lily. She can feel their foul breath on the back of her neck, their long shadows sliding up the hill on either side of her. She is doomed. Josh wants out. The knocking rises. Lily looks down at the grave, her tears tracking down her cheeks, dripping off her chin. Her tears flood the earth. The rough-hewn planks of Josh's simple coffin become visible in the mud. Something moving inside the slats. Lily weeps. The walkers surround her. The knocking rises to a thunderous beat. Lily sobs and she reaches down and tenderly touches the coffin. When all at once, Josh bursts out of the wooden enclosure, tearing through it as though it were made of matchsticks, his hungry mouth chewing the air, an inhuman groan coming out of him. Lily screams, but no sound comes out of her. Josh's big square face churns with bloodlust as he goes for her neck, his eyes as dead and shiny as buffalo nickels. The impact of his rotting teeth hitting her jugular wakes her up in a spasm of horror. Lily jerks awake, soaked in feverish sweat, the morning light vibrating with the sound of someone knocking on her apartment door. She gasps for breath. She blinks away the nightmare, the sound of her own screams still ringing in her ears. The knocking continues. "Lily, you okay?" The familiar voice, muffled outside the front door, barely registers in her ears. She rubs her face, taking deep breaths and trying to get her bearings. At length, the room comes into focus, and her breathing returns to normal. She drags herself out of bed, the dizziness washing over her as she searches for her jeans and her top. The knocking gets frantic. "Coming," she blurts in a strangled voice as she pulls on her clothes. She goes to the door. "Oh. Hey," she mumbles after opening the door and seeing Martinez standing on her porch in the pale light. The tall, rangy Latino wears a bandana pirate-style around his head, and he has muscular arms which poke through the cut-off sleeves of his work shirt. He has an assault rifle slung over his broad shoulder, and his handsome face furrows with concern. "What the hell's going on in there?" he says, giving her the once-over, his dark eyes shining with worry. "I'm fine," she says, a tad unconvincingly. "Did you forget?" No." "Get your guns, Lily," he says. "We're going on that run I told you about, and we need all hands on deck." Chapter 3. "Morning, boss." A squat, middle-aged bald man named Gus greets Martinez and Lily out by the farthest semi-truck, which blocks the exit gate on the north side of town. With his rhino-thick neck and oil-stained sleeveless T-shirt stretched taut by a rotund belly, Gus gives off the impression of a blunt instrument, but what he lacks in intelligence, he makes up for in loyalty. "Morning, Gus," Martinez says as he walks up. "You mind grabbing a couple of them empty gas containers in case we hit pay dirt on the trip?"
"Right away, boss."
Gus whirls and trundles off with his pistol-grip 12-gauge under his arm like a newspaper he hasn't gotten around to reading. Martinez and Lily watch the little troll vanish around a corner. Lily glances to the east and sees the early morning sun peering over the crest of the barricade. It's not even 7 yet, and already the unseasonable chill of the previous week is burned off. In this part of Georgia, spring can be a tad bipolar, coming in cool and wet, but turning as warm and humid as the tropics without warning. "Lily, why don't you ride him back with the others?" Martinez nods toward a big military cargo truck in the middle distance. "I'll put old Gus up in the shotgun seat with me, in case we have to pick off anything on the way." Idling under a canopy of swaying live oaks, the heavy-duty truck sits perpendicular to the semi-truck. It features enormous mud-speckled tires and a mine-resistant, riveted hull as durable as a tank, a recent acquisition from the neighboring National Guard station. The rear hatch is draped in a tarp. As Martinez and Lily approach, an older man in a baseball cap and silk roadie jacket comes around the front of the truck, wiping his hands on a greasy rag. A weather-beaten, rail-thinned 60-something with cunning eyes and an iron-gray goatee. David Stern has the vaguely regal, hard-ass bearing of a college football coach.
"She was down to a quart,"
he says to Martinez.
"I put some recycled oil in her. I want to keep her going for a while."
"Morning, Lily." Lily gives the man a groggy nod and mumbles a drowsy greeting. Gus returns with a pair of battered plastic gas containers.
"Throw them in back, Gus."
Martinez circles around the rear of the truck. Lily and David follow. "Where's the little lady, David?"
"In here."
The tarp flaps open, and Barbara Stern sticks her graying head out. Also in her mid-60s, she wears a denim jacket over a faded cotton muumuu and has the wild silver tendrils of an aging Earth Mother. Her deeply lined, sun-browned face is animated with the rapier wit that has presumably kept her husband on his toes all these years.
"Trying to teach Junior here something. It's like pulling teeth."
The Junior to which she refers suddenly peeks out of the cargo hold next to her. "Nag, nag, nag," the young man says with a rascally smirk. A boyish 22, with long, dark espresso-brown curls. Austin Ballard has deep-set eyes that sparkle with mischief. In his leather bomber jacket and multiple strands of bling around his neck, he affects the air of a second-tier rock star, an incorrigible bad boy. "How the hell do you stand it, Dave?" he says.
"Drink heavily and agree with everything she says."
David Stern cracks wise from behind Martinez.
"Barbara, stop mothering the boy."
"He was trying to light up in here, for Christ's sake,"
Barbara Stern grumbles.
"You want I should let him smoke and send us all to Kingdom Come?"
"Okay, everybody, can it?" Martinez checks his ammo magazine. He's all business, maybe even a little jittery. "We got a job to do. Y'all know the drill. Let's get this done with the minimum of bullshit." Martinez orders Lily and David to get back with the other two, and then leads Gus around to the cab. Lily climbs up and into the rank atmosphere of the cargo hold. The airless chamber smells of old sweat, cordite, and must. A caged dome light shines down dully on shipping containers lined along either side of the corrugated floor. Lily looks for a place to plant herself. "I saved a seat for you," Austin says to her with a lascivious little grin, patting the unoccupied trunk next to him. "Come on, take a load off. I won't bite." Lily rolls her eyes, lets out a sigh, and sits down next to the young man.
"You keep your hands to yourself, Romeo,"
Barbara Stern jokes from the opposite side of the gloomy enclosure. She sits on a low wooden crate next to David, who grins at the twosome across the cargo hold.
"They do make a good pair, though, don't they?"
David says with a gleam in his eyes. "Oh, please," Lily murmurs with mild disgust. The last thing she wants to do is get involved with a 22-year-old, especially a kid as annoyingly flirty as Austin Ballard. Over the past 3 months, since he drifted into Woodbury from the north, arriving malnourished and dehydrated with a ragtag group of 10, he's hit on just about every single woman not yet in menopause. If pressed, however, Lily would have to concede that Austin Ballard is what her old friend Megan would call easy on the eyes. With his curly mane and long lashes, he could easily kindle Lily's lonely soul. Plus, there seems to be more than meets the eye about the kid. Lily has seen him in action. Underneath the pretty boy looks and roguish charm lies a tough, plague-hardened young man who seems to be more than willing to put himself on the line for his fellow survivors. "Lily likes to play hard to get," Austin prods, still with that sideways grin. "But she'll come around." "Keep dreaming," Lily mutters as the truck vibrates and rumbles. The gears kick in, and the cargo hold shudders as the vehicle slowly pulls forward. Lily hears a second engine, a big diesel, revving outside the hatch. Her stomach clenches slightly at the sound, as she realizes that the exit is opening. Martinez watches the semi-trailer slowly backing away from the breach, its vertical stacks spitting and spewing exhaust, opening up a 25-foot gap in the barricade. The woods adjacent to Woodbury revealed themselves in the pale sun 100 yards away. No walkers in sight. Yet. The sun, still low in the sky, streams through the distant trees and hazy moats, burning off the pre-dawn fog. Pulling forward another 20 feet, Martinez brings the truck to a stop and rolls down his window. He peers up at two gunners perched on a cherry picker, which is pushed up against the corner of the wall.
"Miller, do me a favor, will ya?"
One of the men, a skinny African-American in an Atlanta Falcons jersey, leans over the edge.
"You name it, boss. While we're gone, keep the wall clear of biters. Can you do that for me?" "Will do. We want an easy entryway back in. You follow me?" "We're on 'em, man. No worries."
Martinez lets out a sigh, rolling his window back up.
"Yeah, right,"
he mumbles under his breath, slamming the truck into gear and then stepping on the gas. The vehicle rumbles away into the dusky morning. Just for an instant, Martinez glances through the driver's side window at the side mirror. Through veils of dust stirred up by the massive tires, he sees Woodbury receding into the distance behind them. No worries. Sure. What could possibly go wrong? It takes them half an hour to get to Interstate 85. Martinez takes Woodbury Road west, weaving through the abandoned carcasses of cars and trucks littering the two-lane, keeping a speed between 40 and 50 miles per hour in the unlikely event some errant biter tries to lumber out of the woods and latch onto them. As the cargo truck intermittently swerves between wrecks, the rocking motion keeps the folks in back holding onto their seats. Feeling nauseous, Lily studiously avoids brushing up against Austin. En route to the interstate, they pass Greenville, another little farming community along Highway 18 that is practically the mirror image of Woodbury. Once upon a time, Greenville was the county seat, a quaint little enclave of red brick government buildings, white Capitol domes, and stately Victorian homes, many of which were on the historic registry. Now the place lies demolished and drained of all life in the harsh morning sun. Through the flapping rear tarp, Lily can see the rubble, boarded windows, broken colonnades, and overturned cars. "Looks like Greenville's been picked clean," David Stern comments morosely as they stare out the back at the passing devastation. Many of the windows bear the telltale spray paint mark, a big capital D in a circle meaning dead, meaning don't bother, which adorns many of the buildings in this part of the state. "What's the plan, Dave?" Austin asks, cleaning his fingernails with a hunting knife, an affectation that annoys Lily immensely. She can't decide whether it's a genuine habit or strictly for show. David Stern shrugs. "I guess the next town over, Hogansville I think it is, has a grocery store that Martinez thinks is still viable." "Viable?" Another shrug from David. "Who knows? It's all process of elimination." "Yeah, well, let's just make sure we don't get eliminated in the process." He turns and pokes an elbow gently against Lily's ribs. "Get it, Lily?" "Hardy har har," she says, and then glances back out the rear. They pass a familiar access road snaking off the main two-lane, a tall roadside sign glaring in the morning sun. The trademark logo, with its gold sunburst, leans to one side, the big blue letters cracked and faded and strafed with bird shit. Walmart. Save money, live better. A cold trickle of dread sluices down Lily's midsection as she remembers the events of the previous year. At this very Walmart, she and Josh and their contingent from Atlanta first stumbled upon Martinez and his goons. In flashes of woozy memories, Lily remembers finding guns and supplies, and then running into Martinez, the standoff, Megan freaking out, and then Martinez doing his sales pitch, and finally Josh agonizing over whether or not they should try Woodbury on for size. "What's wrong with this joint?" Austin jerks his thumb toward the defunct retail outlet as they roar past the lot. "Everything's wrong with it," Lily murmurs under her breath. She sees stray walkers wandering the Walmart's parking lot like hellish revenants, The overturned cars and scattered shopping carts so weather-beaten and fossilized, they now have weeds growing up through their guts. The gas station islands are blackened and scorched from the fires that ravaged the place back in February, and the store resembles an ancient ruin of broken glass and sagging metal, empty cartons and boxes vomited out of gaping windows. Place got picked clean of food and supplies long ago, David Stern laments. Everybody and their brother had a go at it. As they pass the Walmart, Lily gets a glimpse through the fluttering tarp of the rural farmland north of the property. The shadows of walkers, from this distance as small and indistinct as bugs under a rock, inch back and forth beneath the foliage and behind the dead cornstalks. Since the advent of the herd last year, walker activity has picked up, the population of living dead growing and spreading into the backwaters and desolate farmlands that once lay fallow and deserted. Rumors have circulated that ragtag groups of scientists in Washington and underground labs out west are developing behavioral models and population forecasts for the reanimated dead, and none of it is promising. Bad news hangs over the land, and it hangs right now in the dimly lit cargo hold of the transport truck, as Lily tries to push dark thoughts from her mind. Hey, Barbara. Lily shoots a glance at the gray-haired woman sitting across from her. Why don't you tell us the famous story again? Austin gives a good-natured roll of the eyes. Oh, God, not this again. Lily gives him a look. You be quiet. Come on, Barbara. Tell us the honeymoon story. Austin rubs his eyes. Ugh. Somebody shoot me. Shush. Lily pokes Austin, then looks at the older woman and manages a smile. Go ahead, Barbara. The gray-haired woman grins at her husband. You want to tell it? David puts his arm around his wife. Sure, this'll be a first. Me doing the talking. He looks at the older woman with that glimmer in his eye, and something passes between the two of them that reaches out across the dim enclosure and squeezes Lily's heart. Okay. First of all, it was back in the prehistoric days when I still had black hair and a prostate that worked. Barbara gives him an amused punch in the arm. Can you just cut to the chase, please? These people can do without your entire urinary history. The truck rumbles over a railroad track, rattling the cargo hold. David holds onto his perch, then takes a deep breath and grins. The thing is, we were just kids, but we were madly in love. Still are, for some reason. God knows why, Barbara adds with a smirk, giving him a loaded glance. David sticks his tongue out at her. So anyway, we found ourselves headed to the most beautiful place on earth, Iguazu, Argentina, with nothing but the clothes on our backs and about $100 in pesos. Again, Barbara chimes in. If memory serves, Iguazu means the Devil's Throat, and it's basically a river that runs through Brazil and Argentina. We read about it in the guidebook, and we thought it would be the perfect adventure. David sighs. So anyway, we get there on a Sunday, and by Monday night we had hiked all the way upriver, maybe 5 miles to this incredible waterfall. Barbara shakes her head. 5 miles? Are you kidding me? It was more like 25. David winks at Lily. She exaggerates. Trust me, it was only like 20 or 30 kilometers. Barbara playfully crosses her arms across her chest. David, how many kilometers are in a mile? He sighs and shakes his head. I don't know, honey, but I'm sure you're about to tell us. Like 1.6, so 30 kilometers would be about 20 miles. David gives her another look. Can I tell the story? Is that all right with you? She looks away petulantly. Who's stopping you? So we find this amazing waterfall, and I mean, this is the most beautiful waterfall on Earth. From a single point, you're practically surrounded, 360 degrees. And the water's roaring all around you. And rainbows, Barbara marvels. Everywhere you look. It really was something. So then, David goes on, lover girl here decides to get frisky. Barbara grins. I just wanted to give him a little hug, that's all.
And she's feeling me up with the water rushing all around us.
I wasn't feeling you up.
She was all over me. And all of a sudden she goes, "David, where's your wallet?" And I feel the back of my jeans, and sure enough, the thing's gone. Barbara shakes her head, reliving the moment for the millionth time.
My fanny pack was empty, too. Somebody had ripped us off somewhere along the line. Passports, ID, everything. We were stuck in the middle of Argentina, and we were stupid Americans, and we had no effing clue what to do with ourselves.
David smiles to himself, holding the moment in his memory like a precious heirloom he keeps in a drawer. Lily gets the feeling that this is something essential for the Stearns. Something unspoken, but as powerful as the motion of the tides or the gravitational tug of the moon. "We get back to the closest village and make a few calls," David continues. "But there's no embassy for miles, and the cops are about as helpful as a poke in the eye. We're told we have to wait for our ID issues to be sorted out in Buenos Aires."
Which is like 800 miles away.
"Kilometers, Barbara, 800 kilometers away."
David, don't start.
"Anyway, we have a few centavos left in our pockets, the equivalent of, what, Barbara, $1.50? So we find a little village and talk a local guy into letting us sleep on the floor of his barn for 50 centavos. Barbara smiles wistfully.
It wasn't exactly the Ritz, but we made do.
David grins at her. Turned out the man ran a little restaurant in town, and he agreed to let us work there while we waited for our passports to be ironed out. Babs waited tables while I worked in back, slinging chorizo and making menudo for the locals.
Funny thing was, it turned out to be one of the best times of our lives."
Barbara lets out a pensive sigh.
We were in such a different environment, and all we had to rely on was each other, but it was nice.
She looks at her husband, and for the first time her wrinkled, matronly face softens. A look comes over her, just for an instant, that obliterates time, erases all the years, and turns her back into a young bride in love with a good man.
In fact,
she says softly,
it was even kinda sorta terrific.
David looks at his wife. "We were stuck there for, what? How long was it, Babs?"
We were there for 2.5 months, waiting for word from the embassy, sleeping with the goats, living off that god-awful menudo.
It was an experience. David puts his arm around his woman. He softly kisses her temple. "Wouldn't have traded it for all the tea in Tennessee." The truck shudders over another series of bumps, and the noisy silence that ensues weighs down on Lily. She had expected the story to lift her spirits. She had expected it to distract her, soothe her, maybe even put a salve on her brooding thoughts. But it has only served to pick at the scab that she has grown over her heart. It has made her feel small, alone, and insignificant. Dizziness courses over her and she feels like crying. For Josh, for Megan, for herself, for this whole upside-down nightmare gripping the land. At last, Austin breaks the spell with a confused furrow of his brow. "What the fuck is menudo?" The cargo truck bangs over a series of petrified railroad tracks and enters Hogansville from the west. Martinez keeps both hands on the wheel as he scans the deserted streets and storefronts through the windshield. The mass exodus has left the small village overgrown with prairie grass and ironweed, boarded up tight and littered with cast-off belongings across the roadway. Moldy mattresses, loose drawers, and filthy clothing clogging every gutter. A few stray walkers as ragged as scarecrows wander aimlessly in the alleys and empty parking lots. Martinez applies the brakes and slows the truck to a steady 20 miles an hour. He sees a street sign and consults a page torn out of an old phone book, which he has taped to the dashboard. The location of the Hogansville Piggly Wiggly seems to be on the west side of town, about a half-mile away. The tires crunch over broken glass and detritus, the noise drawing the attention of nearby walkers. From the passenger seat, Gus pumps a shell into the breech of his 12-gauge.
"I got this, boss,"
he says, rolling down his window. "Gus, wait!" Martinez reaches down to a duffel bag stuffed between the seats. He finds a short-barrel .357 Magnum with a silencer attached and hands it to the portly bald man. "Use this. I don't want the noise drawing more of them." Gus puts the shotgun down, takes the revolver, opens the cylinder, checks the rounds, and then clicks it shut.
"Fair enough."
The bald man aims the revolver out the window and picks off 3 corpses with the ease of a man playing a carnival game. The blasts, muffled by the noise suppressor, sound like kindling snapping. The walkers fold one by one, the tops of their crania erupting in bubbles of black fluid and tissue, their bodies sagging to the pavement with satisfying wet thuds. Martinez proceeds west. Martinez makes a turn at an intersection blocked by the wreckage of a 3-car collision, the burned-out husks of metal and glass tangled in a crumpled mess. The cargo truck skirts the sidewalk, and Gus takes down another pair of walkers in tattered paramedic uniforms. The cargo truck continues down a side street. Just past a boarded strip mall, the Piggly Wiggly sign comes into view on the south side of the street, the mouth of the deserted parking lot crowded with half a dozen walkers. Gus puts them out of their misery with little fuss, pausing once to reload, as the truck creeps slowly into the lot. One of the walkers topples against the side of the truck, a fountain of oily blood washing across the hood before the body slides under the wheels. "Fuck!" Martinez blurts as he pulls up to the front of the store. Through the blood-smeared windshield, he can see the disaster area that is the former Piggly Wiggly. Broken paving stones and overturned flower pots spray across the storefront. The windows all broken out and gaping jaggedly, rows of rusted-out carts lying either on their sides or smashed by fallen timbers. Inside the shadowy interior of the store, the aisles are ransacked, the shelves empty, the fixtures hanging by threads and slowly turning in the wind. Fuck! 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 Martinez rubs his face, leaning back against the driver's seat. Gus looks at him.
"So what now, boss?"
The tarp snaps open, the harsh light of day flooding the cargo hold. The glare makes Lily blink and squint as her eyes adjust. She rises to her feet and gazes down at Martinez standing outside the rear of the truck, holding the tarp open with a dour expression on his dark features. Gus stands behind him, wringing his hands. "Good news and bad news," Martinez grumbles. The Sterns stand up, Austin also slowly rising and stretching like a sleepy cat. "Grocery store's been trashed, cleaned out," Martinez announces. "We're SOL. Lily looks at him. "What's the good news?" "There's a warehouse out behind the store, no windows, locked up tight. Looks like people have left it alone. Could be a gold mine." "What are we waiting for?" Martinez levels his gaze at Lily. "Not sure how safe it is in there. I want everybody locked and loaded and on their toes. Bring all the flashlights, too. Looks like it's pretty dark in there." They all reach for their weapons and gear. Lily digs in her rucksack. She pulls out her guns, a pair of Ruger 22 semi-autos, and checks the ammo magazines. She has 2 curved clips, each one loaded with 25 rounds. Bob taught her how to use the high-capacity mags, which makes the pistol slightly unwieldy, but also gives her staying power if things get hectic. "Austin, I want you to carry the duffels," Martinez says, tipping a nod toward the pile of canvas bags in the corner. "Keep them open and ready." Austin is already standing over the bags, gathering them up and slinging them over his shoulder. The others check their ammo supplies, holstering their weapons in quick-release rigs on their hips and belts. Barbara shoves a Colt Army 45 down the back of a sash wrapped tightly around her thick midriff, David handing her 2 extra clips. They work with the practiced concentration of veteran bank robbers. They've done this many times. Still, there's a certain tension crackling around the dim enclosure as Martinez takes one last look through the open tarp. "Gonna pull around back," he says. "Be ready to rock and roll and watch your backs on the way in. The noise of the truck's already drawn more biters." A quick succession of nods around the cargo hold, and Martinez vanishes.
Lily goes over to the rear hatch and braces herself on the jamb as the sound of the cab doors slamming is followed by the revving engine. The truck lurches out of there and then rumbles around the side of the supermarket. 45 seconds later, the air brakes hiss and the truck jerks to a stop. Lily takes a deep breath, draws one of the Rugers, pushes the tarp open, and hops out. She lands hard on the cracked pavement, the sun in her eyes, the wind in her face, the smell of burning rubber wafting in from some far-off cataclysm. Martinez is already out of the cab, the .357 with the silencer holstered and banging on his thigh, Gus hustling around the front of the truck. The bald man climbs behind the wheel. The warehouse sits off to their right, on the edge of the back lot, nestled in a jungle of weeds and razor grass. An enormous corrugated metal box the size of 3 movie theaters. Lily sees the unmarked metal door at the top of a small flight of stairs, situated right next to the loading dock, and 2 huge rolling garage doors in the shadows of the overhang. Everything looks congealed and petrified with age, rusted shut, scarred with graffiti. She glances over her shoulder and gets a glimpse of a cluster of walkers, 100 yards away, out by the busted Piggly Wiggly sign, slowly turning toward the commotion and starting to shamble in their direction. Austin comes up behind Lily. Let's go, he mutters, lugging the duffel bags. While we're young and in one piece. David and Barbara come up fast behind Austin, the older couple staying low, with eyes wide and alert. Martinez gives a hand signal to Gus, pointing off toward the loading dock. Back it up, Gus, and keep the radio open and an eye on things outside. Roger that. Gus revs the engine and then starts to put the truck into gear. We'll be coming out the loading dock side, Martinez informs him. So keep the engine running and be ready to roll at a moment's notice. Got it. Then things get moving very quickly, very efficiently, as Gus backs the truck up to the dock while the others swiftly and silently creep toward the unmarked side door, moving with the cold competence of a SWAT team. Martinez climbs stairs, pulls a long metal shim from his belt, and starts working on the padlock, pounding the shim with the butt of his gun. The others huddle behind him, glancing over their shoulders at the encroaching dead. The lock snaps, and Martinez pries the door open on squeaking hinges. They plunge into darkness and overwhelming stench. Rotting meat, acrid puke-like smells, ammonia odors. The door slamming behind them, making them jump. A single skylight way up above the cobwebbed gantries provides barely enough illumination to reveal silhouettes of aisles and overturned forklifts scattered between the high shelves. Each one of the intruders, including Lily, pauses to smile as their eyes adjust enough to see all the canned goods and packaged foods rising to the rafters. It is indeed the gold mine Martinez had hoped for. But as instantly as they all register their good luck, they hear the noises building in the deeper shadows, as if on cue at their arrival, and one by one their smiles fade, as they glimpse the first of the shadowy figures emerging from behind well-stocked shelves. Chapter 4. On Martinez's signal, they start firing, the collective snapping of silencers and flickering muzzle flashes lighting up the dark warehouse. Lily gets off 3 quick blasts and takes down 2 at a range of about 50 feet. One of the targets, an obese man in tattered work clothes, his flesh the color of earthworms, jerks against a shelf, his skull gushing cerebral fluids as he knocks over a row of canned tomatoes. The other biter, a younger male in greasy dungarees, perhaps a former forklift operator, collapses in a cascade of blood jetting out of the fresh hole in his skull. The dead keep coming, at least 24 or more from every corner of the warehouse. The air thumps and crackles with strobe-like light as the shooters stay clustered tight near the door, their gun barrels fanning out and blazing. Austin drops the duffels and starts working with his Glock 19, another acquisition from the National Guard depot, featuring a noise suppressor and an attachment below the barrel that sends a narrow thread of red light across the darkness. David picks off a female in a stained Piggly Wiggly uniform, sending the dead girl spinning against a rack of stale bagels. Barbara hits an older male in a blood-speckled dress shirt, clip-on tie, and name tag, maybe the former store manager, knocking the creature down in a red mist that paints a light fixture in pointillist profusion. The dampened gunfire emits a surreal racket,
like a round of mad applause, accompanied by a fireworks display ripping through the fetid stillness, followed by the jangle and clank of spent shells hitting the floor. Martinez edges forward, leading the group deeper into the warehouse. They pass perpendicular aisles and fire at lumbering figures with milky white eyes coming headlong toward them. Former machinists, stock clerks, assistant managers, cashiers, each one collapsing in gushing baptisms of blood. They lose count by the time the last one sinks to the floor. In the echoing silence, Lily hears the metallic squawk of Gus's voice coming through Martinez's walkie-talkie.
"The hellfire is going on! Y'all hear me? Boss! Y'all copy what is going on?"
At the end of the main aisle, Martinez pauses to catch his breath. He grabs the radio clipped to his belt. "We're good, Gus," he says into the walkie's mouthpiece. "Ran into a little welcoming party, but we're clear." Over the air, the voice sizzles.
"About gave me a heart attack."
Martinez thumbs the talk button. "Whole fucking staff must have hid out in here when the shit went down." He looks around to the carnage behind veils of blue smoke, the air stinking now of cordite. He thumbs the button. "You just be ready to roll, Gus. Looks like we're gonna be loading the truck to the gills with goodies." The voice returns.
"That's good news, boss. Copy that. I'll be ready."
Martinez thumbs off the radio, puts it back, and turns to the others. "Everybody okay?" Lily's ears ring, but she feels steady, alert. "All good," she says, thumbing the catch on each of her Rugers, dumping the spent magazines, the clips clattering to the floor. She pulls fresh mags from the back of her waistband and slams them in place. She scans the aisles on either side of her, where the remains of walkers lie in gore-drenched heaps. She feels nothing. "Keep an eye out for stragglers," Martinez orders, glancing around the shadowy aisles.
"Damn this thing,"
David Stern is complaining, shaking a flashlight. His gnarled hands tremble.
"I checked the battery just last night."
Barbara rolls her eyes in the darkness.
"The man's hopeless with technology."
She takes the flashlight from him.
"I thought these batteries might be a little iffy."
She unscrews it and fiddles with the C-cells. It doesn't help. The thing will not come back. "Wait a second," Austin says, shoving his Glock back behind his belt. "Got an idea." He goes over to a shelf on which bundles of firewood are stacked alongside sacks of charcoal briquettes, cans of lighter fluid, and packages of wood chips. He pulls a long piece of hardwood loose, pulls a bandana from his pocket, and wraps it around the end of the log. Lily watches him with interest. She can't quite figure this kid out. He seems older than his years somehow. She watches him douse the fabric with lighter fluid. He pulls a bic and sparks the bandana, and all at once a plume of brilliant orange light illuminates the center aisle in a radiant nimbus. "Very moody," Lily says with a smirk. "Nice work, Huckleberry." They split up into two groups. Martinez and the Sterns take the front of the building, a maze of shelves brimming with packaged goods, household supplies, dry goods, condiments, and kitchen staples, and Lily and Austin take the rear. Martinez orders everybody to move quickly, no fucking around, and if they see something they're not sure about, leave it. Take only the items with a shelf life. Austin leads Lily down a side corridor lined with deserted offices. They pass door after door, each of them locked and showing empty darkness behind their windows. Austin walks slightly ahead of Lily, holding the torch high in one hand, the Glock in the other. Lily has both her guns out, ready to rock at a moment's notice. In the flickering yellow light, they move past rows of propane tanks, garden supplies, sacks of fertilizer, cords of firewood, coils of garden hoses, and useless ephemera like bird feeders and garden gnomes. The skin on the back of Lily's neck prickles with goosebumps as she hears the echoing whispers and the shuffling footsteps of the Sterns and Martinez coming from the darkness behind her. At the end of the main aisle, against the back wall, they make a turn and discover a large hydraulic pallet jack sitting amidst the rakes, shovels, and tools. Austin pulls the thing into the aisle. It's a big, greasy hand truck with heavy iron wheels and twin forks that protrude at least 8 feet, and he tests it by pumping the huge hand jack. This might just come in handy, he speculates. "Do me a favor. Hold the torch up for a second." Lily indicates the shadows along the back wall. Austin raises the torch and reveals in the dancing glow of torchlight a pile of empty pallets. They move quickly, slamming the forks under the closest pallet. Then they head back down the dark center aisle, the wheels squeaking noisily on the filthy cement floor. They start loading the pallet, Austin pushing and holding the torch, and Lily grabbing the essentials. They grab 50-gallon jugs of drinking water, cartons of seeds, sharp-edged tools, coils of rope. They make another turn and head down an aisle of canned goods. Lily starts working up a sweat, stacking shrink-wrapped cartons of peaches, corn, beans, collards, tins of sardines, tuna, and Spam.
Gonna be heroes coming back with all this shit,
Austin grunts as he shoves the jack along the aisle.
Yeah, maybe you'll finally get laid,
Lily cracks, stacking the heavy trays with a groan.
Can I ask you a question?
What?
Where's this attitude come from?
Lily keeps working, her guns digging into the back of her belt.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Come on, Lily.
I noticed it right away ever since I met you. You got a chip on your shoulder about something.
They work their way toward the end of the canned goods aisle. Lily slams another carton of cans on the pallet and grumbles.
Can we just get this thing done and get the hell out of here?
Just making conversation, Austin says as he shoves the dolly around the end of the aisle with a grunt. They head down another aisle stacked with crates of rotted fruit. They pause. Austin holds the torch up and reveals the blackened, shriveled peaches and bananas in their maggot-infested crates. The fruit is decomposed into slimy black lumps. Lily wipes the sweat from her face, her voice coming out low and hoarse.
The truth is, I lost some people very close to me.
Austin stares at the rotten fruit. Look, I'm sorry I brought it up. I'm sorry. He starts shoving the dolly deeper into the aisle.
You don't have to wait.
Lily grabs him, holds him still. A faint metallic tapping noise straightens her spine and she whispers,
"Shine the torch over there."
In the flickering glow, they see a row of freezer doors along the left side of the aisle. The stench of rancid meat hangs in the air. Lily pulls her guns. The last door on the left is intermittently jiggling and creaking, the rusty hinges loose.
"Stay behind me. Hold the torch up,"
Lily whispers, thumbing the hammers on both her Rugers, creeping toward the last door on the left.
"Walker?"
Austin grabs his Glock and moves in close behind her.
"Just shut up and hold the torch up."
Lily moves past the jiggling door, pauses, stands with her back against the freezer.
"On 3,
she whispers.
"You ready?"
"Ready." Lily grabs the latch.
1, 2, 3.
She rips the freezer door open, and both barrels go up and her heart skips a beat. There's nothing there. Nothing but darkness and a reeking stench. The odor engulfs Lily, making her eyes water as she steps back, lowering the pistols. The black, oily death rot clings to the inside of the dark freezer. She hears a noise and looks down at something small and furry scuttling past her feet. She lets out a pained breath as she realizes it was just a rat making all the noise.
"Fuck me,"
Austin comments breathlessly, lowering the Glock and letting out a sigh of relief.
"Come on,"
Lily says, shoving her guns back in her belt.
"We got enough. Let's head back, get the truck loaded, and get the fuck out of here."
"Sounds good to me," Austin says, yanking the dolly back with a smile, then pushing it back down the aisle, following Lily toward the front of the warehouse. Behind him, a large figure lurches out of the freezer. Austin hears it first, and only has time to turn around and see the massive male in dungarees and mangled face barreling toward him. Mandibles clenching and unclenching, eyes the color of sour milk, the biter stands well over 6 feet tall and is covered with a film of white mold from being shut in the freezer for so long. Jerking away from it, reaching for his Glock, Austin trips over the corner of the dolly. He falls down, his gun slipping out of his hand, the torch rolling across the cement. The huge biter looms over him, drooling black bile, the torchlight now shining up at a surreal angle. Flames flicker and reflect off the corpse's shimmering milky eyes. Austin tries to roll away, but the biter gets its gigantic dead fingers around Austin's pant legs. He lets out an angry howl, kicking at the walker, cursing it. The thing opens its mouth, and Austin slams the heel of his boot into the maw of black shark-like teeth. The crunch of the lower jawbone hardly slows the thing down. The creature goes for the flesh of Austin's thigh. The weight of the thing is unbearable, like a house pressing down on him. And just as the thing is about to bite down on Austin's femoral artery, the blackened teeth only centimeters away, the snapping of 2 silenced .22 caliber rounds rings out. Only a few seconds have transpired from the moment the biter first appeared, but that's the exact amount of time it has taken Lily to hear the commotion, stop in her tracks, spin around, jack the hammers, raise the guns, take careful aim, and intercede. She hits the biter dead center between the eyes, just above the bridge of the nose. The huge corpse whiplashes backward in a cloud of blood mist that looks like smoke in the darkness, the top of its skull splitting open and gushing. It lands in a wet heap at Austin's feet as the young man squirms away from it and gasps for breath and edges backward on his ass on the cold cement for several frenzied moments.
Fuck. Jesus. Fuck.
You okay? Lily comes over, kneels and inspects Austin's legs.
You all right?
I'm fine. He sputters and stammers, catching his breath. He stares at the massive lump of corpse lying at his feet. Come on. Let's... Yo! The sound of Martinez's voice coming from the front of the warehouse penetrates Lily's ringing ears. Lily! Austin! You two okay? Lily hollers over her shoulder. We're good. Get your shit and come on! Martinez sounds nervous. The noise is drawing more of them out of the woodwork. Let's go! Come on, pretty boy. Lily mutters to Austin, helping him up. They get up, and Austin retrieves the torch before it has a chance to set anything on fire, and they get the hand dolly moving. The thing weighs a ton now, and it takes both of them, huffing and puffing, to roll it down the aisle. They all meet at the loading dock. The Stearns and Martinez have filled the duffels as well as half a dozen large cardboard boxes with a plethora of packaged goods, including cartons of ramen noodles, gourmet instant coffee, 2-liter bottles of juice, packages of flour, boxes of rice-a-roni, several pounds of sugar, gallon jars of pickled vegetables, and shrink-wrapped cartons of Crisco, hamburger helper, macaroni and cheese, and cigarettes. Martinez radios Gus and tells him to back the truck up as close to the loading dock as possible, and be ready to roll when the garage door comes up. Austin, still breathless and shaky from the attack, pushes the pallet up the corrugated metal hatch. "Give me that hammer you found back there," Martinez says to David. The older man steps up and hands the hammer over to Martinez. The others crowd around, waiting nervously, as Martinez slams the business end of the hammer against the padlock at the bottom of the garage door. The lock is stubborn, and the pounding noises echo. Lily glances over her shoulder, half aware of shuffling sounds coming from the deeper shadows behind her. The lock finally snaps, and Martinez yanks the door. The thing rolls up with a rusty shriek. The wind and light rush into the warehouse, smelling of tar and burning rubber, making everybody blink. The floor swirls with stray packing straps and litter stirred up by the breeze. At first, as they take their first steps outside, nobody sees the pile of wet rubbish and moldy cardboard boxes across the loading dock next to a garbage dumpster, which is moving slightly, palpating with something underneath. They're all too busy following Martinez out across the grimy deck with armfuls of supplies. Gus has the truck revving, the tarp thrown open, the exhaust stack chugging and puffing in the spring winds. They start loading up the back. In through the gap go the heavy duffel bags. In go the boxes. In go the contents of the pallet, the canned goods, the water jugs, the garden supplies, the tools, and the propane. Nobody even notices the moving cadaver across the loading dock, pushing its way out of the trash pile, then rising to his feet with the creaky, inebriated uncertainty of an overgrown baby. Lily glimpses movement out of the corner of her eye and turns toward the biter. A wiry African-American corpse in his late 20s, maybe early 30s, with short cornrows crowning his skull, shuffles clumsily toward them like a drunken mime walking against imaginary wind, clawing at the air. He wears a tattered orange jumpsuit that has a familiar look to Lily, but she can't place it. "I got this," Lily says to no one in particular as she pulls one of her Rugers. The others notice the commotion and pause in their efforts, drawing their weapons, watching Lily stand stone still, steady as a milepost, aiming her front sight at the approaching corpse.
A moment passes. Lily stands as still as a statue. The others stare as Lily finally, calmly, almost languidly decides to pull the trigger, again and again, emptying the remaining 6 rounds in the magazine. The gun claps and flashes, and the young black corpse does a jitterbug on the dock for a moment, exit wounds spewing atomized blood. The rounds chew through the hard shell of its cranium, shredding its cornrows and sending chunks of its prefrontal lobe and gray cerebrospinal fluid skyward. Lily finishes and stares emotionlessly. The biter doubles over and collapses to the dock in a blood-sodden heap. Standing in a blue haze of her own gun smoke and cordite, Lily mumbles something to herself. Nobody hears what she says. The others stare at her for a long moment, until Austin finally comes over and says, "Good job, Annie Oakley." Martinez breaks the spell. "Okay, let's get a move on people before we draw more of them." They pile into the back of the truck. Lily is the last one to climb in and find a spot amid the overloaded cargo bay. She sits on one of the propane tanks and holds onto a side rail in order to brace herself against the G-forces as the cab doors slam and the engine grinds and the truck suddenly roars away from the loading dock. Lily remembers right then, for some reason the realization popping into her head as the truck pulls away, where she's seen an orange jumpsuit like the one Cornrow was wearing. It's a prison suit. They get all the way across the lot, out the exit, and halfway down the access road before Barbara Stern breaks the silence.
Not a bad day's work for a bunch of emotional cripples.
The giggling starts with David Stern, then spreads among every passenger, until finally even Lily is giggling with crazy, giddy relief and satisfaction. By the time they make it back to the highway, each and every occupant of that dark, malodorous enclosure is buzzing with excitement.
Can you imagine the look on the DeVries kids' faces when they see all that grape juice?
Barbara Stern looks positively ebullient in her faded denim and wild gray tresses.
I thought they were going to storm the castle when we ran out of Kool-Aid last week.
What about that Starbucks Instant Via? David chimes in. Oh, I can't wait to retire those goddamn coffee grounds to the compost pile.
We got all the food groups, too, didn't we? Austin enthuses from his perch on a crate across from Lily. Sugar, caffeine, nicotine, and Dolly Madison cupcakes. Kids are going to be on a sugar buzz for a month. Lily smiles at the young man for the first time since they met. Austin returns her gaze with a wink, his long curls tossing around his handsome face from the slipstream currents coming through the flapping tarp. Lily glances out through the rear hatch and sees the deserted country road passing in a blur, the afternoon sun strobing pleasantly through the trees receding into the distance behind them. For just an instant, she feels like Woodbury might have a chance after all. With enough people like these folks, people who care about each other, they just might have a shot at building a community. You did good today, pretty boy, Lily says at last to Austin. She looks at the others. Y'all did good. In fact, if we can just... A faint noise from outside stops her short. At first, it sounds merely like the wind buffeting the tarp, but the more Lily listens to it, the more it sounds like an almost alien noise from another time, another place. A noise that she hasn't heard. A noise nobody has heard since the plague broke out years earlier. You hear that? Lily looks at the others, all of whom now seem to be listening in awe. The noise rises and falls on the wind. It seems to be coming from the sky, maybe a mile away, vibrating the air like a drum roll. Sounds like... No, it can't be. What the fuck? Austin pushes his way toward the rear of the chamber and sticks his head out, craning his neck to get a glimpse of the sky. You're kidding me! Lily moves next to him, holding on to the rear hatch and leaning out. The wind whips her hair and stings her eyes as she peers upward, and sure enough, she catches a fleeting glimpse of it in the western sky. Just the tail of the craft is visible above the tree line, the rotors spinning wildly, the body of the chopper listing downward. The thing is in trouble. A thin contrail of black smoke flags behind the helicopter like a dark comet as it plunges out of sight. The cargo truck slows. Martinez and Gus have obviously seen the thing as well. Do you think it's... Lily starts to pose the question on everybody's mind when her words are cut off. The impact of the crash over half a mile away rattles the earth. A mushroom cloud of fire lights up the woods and scrapes the sky. Chapter 5.
Here! Right here! Pull off!
Gus pumps the brakes, the cargo truck groaning as it cobbles off the 2-lane. It bumps across a narrow patch of muddy grass along the shoulder and then rattles to a stop in a cloud of carbon monoxide and dust.
"This is as close as we're going to get in the truck,"
Martinez says, leaning forward in the shotgun seat. He cranes his neck to see through the grimy windshield, getting a fleeting glimpse of the column of smoke rising over the trees on the western horizon. It looks to be about a quarter-mile away. He reaches for his .357.
"Gonna have to hoof it the rest of the way."
"It's a long way off, boss."
Gus gazes out a side window, scratching his grizzled cheek.
"Looks like it went down in the deep woods."
Martinez thinks about it, chewing the inside of his cheek. In this part of Georgia, many of the roadways cut through shallow wooded valleys known as hollows. Formed by rivers and surrounded by densely forested hills, these thickets of brushwood, weeds, and muck can be rife with sinkholes, colonies of mosquitoes, and plenty of nooks and crannies in which mud-bound biters frequently lurk. Gus looks at Martinez.
"What do you say we try and drive it?"
"Negative." Martinez bites down hard on the word, checking the cylinder on his Magnum. He can hear the truck's rear gate banging down, the others climbing out, their tense voices carrying on the afternoon breeze.
"We'll get stuck in this pea soup sure as shit."
"Whatever you say, boss."
Gus rams the shift lever into neutral and cuts the engine. The silence fills with the rush of nature, the jet engine drone of crickets, the wind in the trees.
"Leave the 12-gauge. Take one of the AR-15s in case it gets hairy and grab the machete under the seat."
Martinez has a black Marine Raider Bowie knife with a 15-inch blade strapped to his leg, and now checks it. He does this compulsively, jaw clenched, all business, as he hears the others coming around the side of the truck. He climbs out of the cab. They all gather at the front of the cab in the weeds and buzzing clouds of gnats, their faces drawn and pale with tension. The air smells of rot and burning metal. Austin stands there wringing his hands, gazing off at the crash site. The Sterns huddle together, both their brows furrowed with worry. Lily has her hands on her hips, her Rugers holstered high on her waist.
"What are you thinking?"
she says to Martinez.
"Dave and Barb, I want you two to stay with the truck. Keep watch."
Martinez shoves his Magnum behind his belt.
"If you get swarmed, just drive them off, lead them away, and then circle back and get us. You got that?"
David just nods and nods, looking like a nervous bobblehead doll.
"Yes, absolutely. Keep the walkie with you, keep the frequency open while we're gone."
Gus hands the 2-way to David, who is still nodding and muttering.
Got it. There's a box of road flares in the back,"
Martinez says to Gus.
"Go grab a handful, and get the first aid kit too, will you?"
Gus hurries around the back of the truck while Martinez looks at his watch.
"We got a good 4 hours of daylight left. I want to get out of there and back before dark. No fucking around."
Lily has one high-capacity magazine left. She slams it into her Ruger, snapping the slide.
"The thing is, what if we find survivors?"
"That's the point," Martinez says, unsnapping the sheath on his leg, positioning the knife hilt for quick access.
"Plus, the helo might still be in one piece."
Lily looks at him.
"We got no stretcher, no medic, no way to get them back." "We'll cross that bridge when we get there,"
Martinez says, adjusting his bandana, already soaked in sweat across his forehead. Gus comes back with an armful of flares, which looks like sticks of dynamite. Martinez gives everybody a flare.
"I want everybody to stay together in tight formation, but if for some reason you get separated, light off one of these and we'll find you."
He looks at the Sterns.
"You run into any trouble back here, you light one off."
He glances at the bald man.
"Gus, I want you on the right flank with the machete. Keep the noise down. Use the AR-15 as a last resort. I'll take the left flank."
He looks at Lily.
"You and Junior take the middle."
Austin gazes up at the sky. The mid-afternoon clouds have rolled in. The day has turned gray and ashy. The wetland ahead of them crawls with swaying shadows. It's been a wet year, and now the ground looks impassable, mired in washouts, deadfalls, and dense groves of white pine standing between them and the crash site.
"There's a creek
Runs through the middle of the woods, Martinez is saying, taking a deep breath and drawing his magnum. We'll follow it as far as we can, and then navigate by the smoke. Everybody got that? They all nod, saying nothing, swallowing back the mounting apprehension that passes between them like a virus. Martinez nods. Let's boogie. It's tough going for a while, the unforgiving mud sucking at the soles of their boots, making wet smacking noises in the primeval silence of the woods. They follow the serpentine bends of the brackish stream, and the deeper they venture into the hollow, the more the trees swallow the daylight. You okay, Huckleberry? Lily whispers to Austin, who walks alongside her, his Glock gripped tightly in both of his sweaty hands. I'm fantastic, he lies. His long curls are pulled back from his glistening face with a leather tie. He chews on his lip nervously as he churns through the mud. You don't have to hold your gun like that, she says with a smirk. Like what? Like you're some kind of Delta Force commando. Just keep it handy. Will do. If you get one in the crosshairs, just take your time. They're slow, so make your shots count. You don't have to do the gunslinger routine. Austin shoots her a glance. Just want to be ready. In case I need to come to your rescue. Lily gives him an eye roll. Yeah, great. I feel totally safe now. She peers into the trees ahead of them and sees the faint haze of smoke building in the woods.